So Microsoft created a small business on-prem phone system solution. Obviously now in 20 years and 20 versions actually,
Sure.
that has also matured tremendously and got to a point where it's not only a phone system anymore. It is a complete cloud communication platform.
One cost model, one solution doesn't necessarily meet the dynamics of many growing businesses today.
Right? It offers a much broader feature set. So there's just an infinite amount of different business use cases.
So welcome everybody in podcast land. We're happy to have you join us again on this very special podcast related to Microsoft Teams and the 3CX experience. My name is Reza Cameron. I'm the VP of Product Marketing at RingOffice, and I'm joined by our CEO, Kashan Chaudhry, who has taken some time out of his very busy schedule to talk to us a lot more about this topic. Kashan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Reza.
Excellent. So let's get into this. I want to talk a little bit more about the history of. Let's start with the history of Microsoft and communications. We know that this is not Microsoft's first trip to the candy store, let's call it, in terms of their ability to deploy different solutions in the marketplace as it relates to applications and communications. I think history, as I know of it, there was their OCS deployments that they had back in the day, which were more on-premise systems, their movement into Links, which also played into that very similar role, their acquisition of Skype for Business, I believe, where they started to now dabble into that whole hybrid work environment between on-premise and, communications in the cloud. And then finally, Teams, the Teams experience, which everybody knows today. What are your thoughts on their deployment models so far and their strategy?
Yeah, you missed one actually.
Did I? Okay.
There was also Microsoft Response Point.
Oh wow!
So
okay.
Yeah, back in the day, actually,
You're much younger than you look, by the way. I wouldn't have guessed that.
We were involved with Microsoft Response Point as well. So Microsoft created a small business on-prem phone system solution. It was speech rec based, and it was very easy to use, very easy to deploy and manage. I think it maybe didn't last more than 2 years, maybe less than that.
Right.
And Microsoft just pulled the plug on it. So there is a lot of history in terms of Microsoft and their various projects and initiatives in the communication space.
Mm-hmm.
And but again, you build and you learn, and so now with Microsoft Teams, they've got a hit. Microsoft Teams is a product that a lot of people love now.
Yeah, but it's interesting that to see the history and the fact that they failed 4 times at it, mm-hmm. and now we're starting to get down the secret sauce. And I think that one of the things that we've noticed about Microsoft, and I'd love to get your opinion on this, is they've always had this, IT-driven approach for their solutioning, and mainly because of the software solutions that they've had in the past, whether it be Office 365, other traditional software solutions that normally are very forgiving. And what I mean by forgiving is the same standards that are required for a user or for the network pieces are not necessarily the same than would be for, say, real-time applications, real-time communication applications, right? And I wonder if perhaps that was some of the challenges they've had before. Do you see that as still continued challenges that they have today, or have they got the secret sauce and everything's right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're right. Coming from an IT application and a data-driven background, that is something that it has taken a while to get to a point where to get to a product like Microsoft Teams.
Sure.
Right? So that being said, there's on the flip side of that, if we talk a little bit about the history of Microsoft, if you look at the history of 3CX, so 3CX phone system started around about 20 years ago.
Right.
Now they also were a pure software approach, right,
Mm-hmm.
and purely software-driven company, but they from the ground up were focused on real-time communication and initially focused on telephony.
Right.
It was from the ground up. It was a voice solution. It was built in software, and it was designed originally to run on Microsoft Windows. Obviously now in 20 years and 20 versions actually,
sure,
that has also matured tremendously and got to a point where it's not only a phone system anymore. It is a complete cloud communication platform. Actually, it's a communication platform that can be deployed in the cloud or on premise.
Right.
It can run on Windows. We can also run on Linux, and in fact, most of the deployments are now on Linux. and it's extremely powerful. But their approach has always been real-time communication first, and that has driven it, right? So
Yeah, but sorry to be the devil's advocate here, but we're talking about Microsoft Teams here. We're talking about real-time communications.
Mhm.
We're talking about communications in the cloud. Teams is saying they have a cloud solution. You're saying that 3CX has a cloud solution as well. It sounds very similar, right?
Yeah.
So if I was to look at it, if we were to depict it and get a little bit deeper, like when you look at the strengths of, say, a Microsoft Teams solutions, what do you view those strengths to be?
Yeah, so excellent point, right? So let's look at both, right? So strengths of Microsoft Teams, first and foremost, it's a very user-friendly team chat and meeting solution.
Okay.
Okay, first and foremost, that's what it is. That's what it does the best.
Sure.
And that's the feature that users fall in love with, and that's kind of where the whole story starts, right? And on top of that, the tight integration with Microsoft Office 365 and all the Microsoft applications. Those are really the key strengths, right? So if for organizations that are immersed in the Microsoft suite, right, it makes a lot of sense because everything kind of just fits in place.
Well, not to mention that I mean, at least how they depict it, it's free, right? It's that entry model in what they say is it's free. Do you see that?
Well, it starts free, but it doesn't stay free.
It doesn't stay
because
free.
as you start to, you need more functionality, and when you want to integrate, when you want to do voice, or you want to be able to make and receive calls through it, or when you want to use some of the communication routing and phone system functionality, it's not free.
Right.
And we'll get to that in a little bit, but it's it can get
expensive,
quite expensive.
Yeah, depending on what it is. So here's another question. Then would be, okay, then we've talked about TeamSync. What about the strengths of a 3CX solution?
Yeah, so there's some great strengths of 3CX. So, I'll start with what you were saying, that, yeah, there's a lot of similarities. I agree with you, right? So 3CX also has a team chat and a team meeting solution.
Sure.
If I were to start with probably the number one biggest difference, that would be that the flexibility of the 3CX solution and how cost effective it is, right? The pricing model.
Right.
Those are really where that's where the biggest differences are. Okay. 3CX also is open standards based. Okay. So you don't have to go and find products that are specifically built for 3CX the way you do with Teams, because Microsoft pushes their own proprietary protocols and so on. With 3CX is completely open standards based. So there's a huge ecosystem of hardware, software products. There's a huge ecosystem. So, depending on the business needs, if you need to integrate paging, alarms, bells, PA systems, emergency alerting, door entry systems, intercoms, visual alerters, loud ringers, things for the factory floor, for the warehouse, for all of those things. There's just a huge ecosystem of standard.
So best of breed standards.
You can pretty much make anything work with it, right? So that's a huge benefit in terms of flexibility. In terms of feature set, right? It offers a much broader feature set. So there's just an infinite amount of different business use cases for various verticals and industries, and being able to give you a platform that's flexible enough to pretty much be able to solve any problem for any business. That's what 3CX is doing.
For sure.
Integrations with all types of verticals. If you're in the hospitality business, you want to integrate your property management system for guest management and check-in, check-out, for you want a good guest experience.
Yeah.
Room management if you're a call center, being able to do advanced call center functionality for managing calls, for managing more than just if you want to do omni-channel, it enables you to do that with messaging and chat and all of that, integrating with your call center. If you have CRM systems you want to integrate, or other customer service systems, it integrates beautifully. If you want to create custom call flows, if you want to integrate custom call flows with your own proprietary databases, there's just, the list goes on and on in terms of the flexibility. It also has its own mobile apps, desktop apps, web apps, and offers you just a tremendous amount of autonomy, control, and manageability.
Right.
That if you're a mid-market company, if you're a growing company, you can't afford to necessarily just hope and pray that your communication is being managed by, on a proprietary shared platform
Yep.
like a Teams, and what happens, if there's an outage, which
Sure.
can happen, right? Like, where we live
or even what we've talked about before, the fact that a one size fits all, one cost model, one solution doesn't necessarily meet the dynamics of many of growing businesses today that have a very, let's face it, technology is changing so quickly, like we've talked about in the past, and your customers' needs are changing quickly as we continue to move down from generation X to what is it, generation Z now that's coming up
I think
here.
we're now getting on generation Alpha now.
Jesus Christ. So and I don't even know what that looks like, but the dynamics are changing so quickly. The rapidness of the technology changes are happening so quickly. The customization is also going to be needed as well at some level. So that's going to be important.